Hello, good morning. Our first issue is ban on drones and private toys in Jammu and Kashmir's Rajouri district. In the wake of recent drone attacks near the Jammu Air Force Station, Rajouri District Administration has imposed Section 144 of CRPC, and then it said that it is imposing ban on storage, sale, possession, use of drones in the nearby security areas. It said that if anyone wants to use it, especially the government agencies, they can take the permission from the local administration. Private individuals cannot use for the specified amount of time. They have to submit the drones that they have in the local police station, otherwise, it will be considered as illegal. Next issue, very important, Uttarakhand Chief Minister and election issue. Lok Sabha MP has been appointed as Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, and he has to resign to his Lok Sabha membership. As of now, he is not a Lok Sabha member and he is also not a member of Legislative Assembly. Under Indian Constitution, Article 164.4, Subclause 4 says that no legislative member can become Chief Minister except if he or she gets elected within 6 months of getting into the office. Then how do they get elected within 6 months? There are two ways. One, if the state has legislative council, that person will be nominated as legislative council member. Two, if there is any vacancy in legislative assembly, election commission will conduct by polls. Through that also he or she will get elected. These are the two options. In this case, now at present, under section 151A of RPA, Representation of People's Act, by-poll should be conducted within 6 months of a particular seat getting vacant. But there is one more condition to this. That is, if more than 1 year's term is left, then only this is conducted. But in Uttarakhand, 1 year's term is not there. So what should this person do? The only option is by-polls. But to conduct the by-polls, as we said, this is the criteria. But election commission can conduct it. Even though it says that 1 year's minimum tenure should be there, election commission can take its discretionary decision. But then, by-poll is the only way because Uttarakhand is a unicameral legislation. That means it doesn't have any legislative council. So let's see what happens. It's the discretion of election commission now. Next issue is Exgratia amount to families of COVID dead. Recently, Supreme Court has taken up this particular case and it has requested the central government and state government to consider compensation ex gratia. It also said that NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, which is responsible under Disaster Management Act, has to decide on the compensation. Till now, they have not formulated any guidelines on this. This can be considered a failure on behalf of it. But central government says that COVID is a continuous disaster. We already have fund crunch. Funds that can be spent on compensation can be used for other things like building the health infrastructure, food, medicine, etc. That's the argument of central government. And the Supreme Court said, we are leaving it to you. It's your decision now. We are not going to encroach upon your space. Next issue is big tech firms and its accountability. Recently, in a conference, our External Affairs Minister has discussed on this and he said, social media has a big role in shaping the opinion of the people, especially in democracy. That means it has larger power. Whenever there is a power, there must be a responsibility. And these companies, big tech firms, especially social media firms, they should be subject to the national laws because they are getting the information. They are getting the data from the countries. So in this context, without responsibility, if they have power, that seeks no accountability. This is a debate regarding the recent IT rules. Next issue is Centre's Agri digital proposals. Recently, central government has released a consultation paper on India digital ecosystem of agriculture. Many farmer groups have criticized on this and they said farmers' database is needed, but that digital ecosystem should be maintained by the government, not by the corporates. In this particular document, it's proposed to have a database by the corporates and other private companies. So the farmer groups have expressed the concern saying that it might lead to exploitation, data protection concerns, mismanagement of land records, exclusion of landless cultivators. These all will be the concerns. So that's why they have requested the government to reconsider them. Next issue is elections, no guarantee against tyranny by Supreme Court CJI. We can use such statements in our answers. Recently, our CJI has mentioned that rule of law should be protected, should be used to protect the rights of ordinary citizens. In this context, elections are not equivalent to protection of rights. We have 70 years. In these 70 years, we have many elections, but still there are many rights violations, poverty, inequalities, they are still there. In this context, this freedom need not be guaranteed by the elections. So, judiciary and judicial rights. Judiciary requires complete freedom to have check over government's powers and actions. Social media, it has impact on democracy. So, it also need to be regulated in a positive sense. Next issue is Green Pass entry issue. European Union started issuing digital COVID certificates, which we call them as green passes. And in issuing digital COVID certificates, it has not included any of the Indian manufactured vaccines. That means a person, if a person takes Covishield, he or she is not given digital pass. India said we might go for reciprocal measures on this because Covishield is already recognized by WHO. But still you are not recognizing, that means you are discriminating. Against these discriminatory policies, we might go for taking action. That's the India's reaction. Next issue is cabinet approval for viability gap funding for Bharat Net program. Bharat Net program is for internet facility, internet connection. Viability gap funding has been announced for 16 states through public-private partnership model. The government has revised the strategy. This strategy includes creation, upgradation, operation and maintenance and utilization of BharatNet by the private sector partners. Earlier, all this was done by the government. Now, by the private sector partner, which will be selected by the government through competitive bidding. International players also can be part of this. This extension of BharatNet, this allows extension of BharatNet to all villages, to all inhabited villages. This will reduce digital divides and promotes digital equity. Tourism and loss to tourism is amounted to $4 trillion in the last 2 years. United Nations Conference on Development and UN World Tourist Organization, they released a report saying that in 2020 and 2021, internationally there's a loss of $4 trillion. This trend might continue in 2022 and 2023 also. In this context, national government should take individual measures to address this particular issue because tourism is closely associated not just with the economic growth but also associated with social equity. Next, let us go through the editorials. These three are important editorial issues. First one is Amendment to Cinematograph Act. Recently, the government has proposed Draft Cinematograph Amendment Bill, under which Section 6.1 says that central government can direct the re-examination of the film even after the certification of Central Board of Film Certification. And recently, central government has also abolished film certification appellate tribunal. That means if there is any conflict, we have to go to High Court only. That might take time and it might get the delay in the film's release. Now, in Union of India versus case, Shankarappa case, Supreme Court has clearly said that Section 6.1 of this act is unconstitutional. But again, government is trying to bring in that through this particular amendment. Cinema has power in transforming the society. In this context, such curtailment can lead to curtailment of freedom of speech and expression. Next issue is interview with Monkek Singh Ahluvaliah. This is important. Please go through it carefully. 1991 reforms, how Lessons can be learned from that. 1991 reforms were introduced to unleash the potential of private sector, and they have followed the gradualist approach. That means slowly they introduced the reforms, not a sudden reform. And GDP growth has averaged 7% in the 25 years after introducing the reforms. But still there are some issues. Factor market issues like land reforms, labor reforms, they have to be introduced. Financial sector reforms are still pending. These have to be taken up. And government, it is slowly trying to move away from the global supply chains. In 1991, through LPG reforms, we tried to integrate with the supply chains. But LPG, the recent reforms, let's say, government keeping out of RCEP, they are against the reforms that were taken up earlier. So in this context, government should focus on holistic issues, and it should also focus on the unemployment issues as soon as possible. Final issue is reimagining the examinations. Recently, many states have cancelled the exams. Even CBSE and others, they said they are going for internal assessment through which through which the students will be given the marks. Evaluation system ensures empowerment and tests the acquisition of knowledge. Instead of the cancelling the exams, one viewpoint is to conduct online exams. Postponement of exams can be done under Disaster Management Act. Whenever feasible, government can go for conduct of exams, online exams. In this context, how do we evaluate online exams? How do we evaluate? It must have a proper assessment of educational objective, that is, critical and independent thinking, problem solving ability, reflective thinking, skill development, application of knowledge. These areas should be considered in the evaluation process. But in India, if you look at the ground situation, do we have the digital inclusion? In such context, how can we go for online examinations? So practical issues also need to be considered. Thank you very much. All the very best.